Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a session of chatting, I guess, if what you may call it. But anyways, this is in regards to human rights and our three stooges up on the hill. Okay, so I've noticed that there are certain words that when we say, uh, we kind of get barred from saying things, and so this way our followers can't see us, so we're shadow banned. Anyways, hopefully that eventually will dissipate and that we'll be able to do something in regards to saving this country and the people, because nobody's coming to save you. Okay, and this is the sad reality that people think, somebody's going to come and do it. I don't need to do it, but we need the people to take action. So this is the holidays. I don't know if you're like me, but it's really hard to get into the spirit of the holidays unless I'm cracking jokes at, our three stooges. Hi, La, we got your messages and didn't have a chance to respond because my phone died. So anyways, back to what I was saying is that, in regards to what's happening in government, it's all smoke and mirrors, all of this. Freeland yesterday. Oh, just in time, right? So they didn't have to show you right away, or what's going on, but they have to to kind of show that there's a little rift, okay? Because she's going to be applying for the job of prime minister, okay? And if you think that her and she and Justin are miles apart here or whatever, don't even think it. They're both, along with Jagmeet, okay, WEF puppets, young global leaders, and she sits on the board of the WEF, and they will not do anything that, Klaus Schwab doesn't want them to do. So if you see anything flying around in this house there, it's our little buddies. Okay. So anyways, it seems to be pretty constant. But Klaus Schwab is not going to, let Trudeau or Freeland deviate from their plans. Okay. And neither will Jagmeet. So I've been working on these cartoon characters to kind of release out to the public in regards to Jagmeet Singh, and after Pierre Poilievre, calling for 3 non-confidence votes in Parliament, they still have not succeeded. Jagmeet's been doing this little dance back and forth, and then still sticking with the Liberals. Well, he has no choice. He's not big enough to be able to sway the people in this country. They're not, the NDP is not that popular. They just got lucky. And the thing is now with everything that's going on in Canada, with the invasions that we have and all of the corruption, the elevated corruption that we've had for some time now, people are just not going to vote him in. And that's a sad reality for him. Okay. But anyways, he has to maintain the liberals in power, and that's what we've been seeing. So no matter how many times the conservatives scream, non-confidence vote, it doesn't matter. Absolutely not one iota, because they have to keep Trudeau, or the Liberals at least, in power, because more than half of the cabinet is WEF. And, even though Klaus Schwab has said that and is proud of that, they're not just in cabinet, people. We also have them inside of our Supreme Court of Canada. They're also in every municipality, the big cities, big municipal cities. Okay. And what's there is global shapers. Okay. So between the young global leaders and the young global shapers, we've been invaded Canada wide in every municipality that has, major cities. We only have 10 major cities in Canada. So again, it's Unbelievable. So right now, for the people who have not heard who we are, what we're about, I'm gonna have to do some housekeeping. Okay. And the CPU is about educating people. And it's kind of funny that all of a sudden now we're starting to hear things we've been screaming about since 2017 and even before that, but legally since 2017. And it's kind of nice at the same time. And it was, it felt great that Freeland resigned, because we're not going to see her bebopping on, her little head bopping there. I don't know if that's whatever drug problem she's got, or her meds aren't working. I don't know. But it makes you wonder, how a journalist got to become the Minister of Finance in Canada and Deputy Prime Minister of all things. Okay. So what would have happened if Justin Trudeau, was she becoming the Prime Minister? God, twitchy. Yeah, twitchy for sure. So anyways, she might have something very wrong with her. We should be mentioning that. But the thing is, when people are corrupt and to the point that, if you guys were to see all the stuff that comes out of Blacklock, okay, which is a reporting agency that's always in Parliament, you would be pulling your hair out of your head, okay, because of the amount of corruption that's been discovered. And Pierre Poilievre, the minute that came out, Pierre Poilievre should have sat down with the Governor General and say, here, this is your job to clean up, because you have to keep the dignity of the crown. And if you don't uphold the dignity of the crown, then you are as guilty for watching on the sidelines, because we have a law where superiors, especially with military power, if they know that something is happening and being done to the people, under corruptive measures and double speak and all of these things, coercive actions, it's their job to report it. She hasn't reported nothing, nada. Okay. And even Pierre Poilievre, even though they're saying, well, they're trying to get charges, and but at the same time, it's the Governor General who can press these charges. So why hasn't he sat down with her? She's supposed to be a political, like she's nonpartisan, so he has every right to go and see her. She's not reserved just to the Prime Minister. Oui, Didier, tout en anglais aujourd'hui, OK? Alors, ça sera pour une autre instance. Je ne peux pas faire les deux en même temps. Merci. So, pour le français, demain, OK? Ça, c'est sûr et certain, puis ça va être la même chose que je vais montrer à l'écran. So anyways, sorry about that, people, but the French will be happening tomorrow evening, same time, so that I can prepare, because what I'm going to be showing you is really interesting in regards to the rule of law, and it says exactly what we've said, okay? And now it's like, okay, well, now hopefully these people will be able to do something, but they can't. Pierre Poilievre cannot free Canadians. Not one prime minister ever can free Canadians, and I'll tell you why. Okay? And that's because it's the people that have to have a vote across Canada, okay, to remove the head of state. So the only way Canadians will ever be free is to become the head of state with all of the personal prerogative powers, okay, together as a whole. So if you think you're free now, you were never free. I used to think we were free too. Oh no, surprise, surprise. Any political party under representative democracy is the fraud. Okay? That and along with political parties, because these parties have to go along to what their parties say to do. They don't work for the Canadian citizens. If you think a police officer is there to protect you, and you say, you're supposed to be protecting me, how many got the answer, sorry, we're not here to protect you. We're here to protect the whole of Canadians. So if you're disturbing the peace, there's only one of you, again, and you're just disturbing the peace of 40, almost 40 million people, then we have to lock you up because you're a danger to society. So they're not here for you. Okay. And that's why I was showing you the other day, the CIA guys, because you see two different assumptions. Okay. One says the government does not work for you. The government works for the state. Okay. The country, and not for the people. They have to maintain the country, and that's supposed to be their jobs. And they have to take care of the country. And that's why you pay taxes. And that's why they enforce the taxes, because the minions, the slaves, have to keep the country going. And then they give you what they call benefits. So in Canada, you don't have freedom. You have benefits. Okay? Remember that. And they can take away those benefits at any time. And here they speak about the notwithstanding clause. And I had an experience with the notwithstanding clause. Okay. That was pretty revealing and interesting. And, there's only two places. Now you have Alberta threatening to use the notwithstanding clause. You have Pierre Poilievre, who says, oh my God, and this was from Larry Brock, stating that Pierre was intending to use, the Conservatives were going to use the notwithstanding clause. Okay. So I that's why I reached out to Brock and said, hey, when I was debating the notwithstanding clause and, saying that, hey, it can't be inside of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms because they're not allowed to derogate from our rights. And the notwithstanding clause does that. So it's illegal. And it all depends on how it's being used. So anybody that says, oh, yeah, use the notwithstanding clause has no clue what the hell they're talking about. Neither does Danielle Smith and neither does Legault. And in Quebec, they've been using it constantly. So, of course, Julius Gray, was afraid that I was going to do something about this. And then every lawyer I was called would hang up on me in regards to the notwithstanding clause. Okay. And then and then one that we finally were able to go into a meeting, and good thing I had somebody else as a witness. And we were in there on a Zoom meeting with lawyers from Ottawa who were claiming to be on the side of human rights. The minute that I said that, no, we want to contest the notwithstanding clause, she was looking up at somebody across from her. There were two girls there and somebody else. And guaranteed they must have been saying, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off. And all of a sudden she says, oh, we got to shut it down here. I can't say anymore. And this is the reception I've been getting, people. When we try to really advance our human rights with somebody who knows about that, because that's all I've been really studying at the international level, the international law rights, which, yes, Canada is bound to, but no, none of the lawyers want to admit that in Canada, all they say is, well, we don't recognize it in Canada. Okay, and Canada does what it wants. No, Canada cannot do what it wants. But as long 1982 was about a decolonization of the people in the country from the UK, but they couldn't do that in 1982. All that Trudeau brought home was the charter attached to our BNA Act in the UK. And here, well, depending on how the UK decided, well, okay, well, we'll change some of the words of that new constitution you want, but you're going to have to do a post-patriation referendum with the people. You have to go back to the people. Okay, so you got 15 years. It never happened. Okay. So since 1982, we're still colonized. We're still treated as a colony, colonies of this country. And why? To lie to everybody, to make us think that the provinces have rights. The provinces have no rights. 1960 liberated all the countries under colonialism. That meant that every province although they are management, only remain as management, because all of our laws are supposed to be equal across the country, except for special circumstances for Quebec under cultural rights. But those cultural rights does not include them to refuse anybody to live in Quebec, because Quebec does not own the province. So all of these things were done illegally or let remain under false pretenses. So if you want to do something in Quebec, well, we should have the same law in BC or in PEI. Okay, none of the provinces are allowed to have, should have different laws. All of them have to abide by international human rights laws. Okay, so this is the fight that we have to have, and this is the fight that you need to get on the side of the CPU with, because alone you can't do anything. Alone, we can't do anything. We've got groups who are saying, well, we're going to wait till the CPU does something before we even look at it. Well, you know what? That is sheer stupidity, because they are stopping Canadians from being liberated. Okay? They are stopping us from getting our freedom, because they don't even want to be educated in what we're trying to say. And we're being proven right at every turn. Every turn. And now I'm going to prove that we're right again. Okay? So, but it takes all of the people involved here. Because Trudeau couldn't do it in 1982. Poilievre can't do it. Nobody can except for we, the people, together. And what we've done is highly legal. It is our rights. And if you go to canadianreferendum.ca and read the whole paper and then sign it, if you approve of that paper, then that's our immediate referendum. Once we have majority, or a big enough majority, it's game over. We become the head of state. We cannot get rid of the crown until that happens. Nobody in Canada has the power, not even the Governor General, to say, hey, remove the crown. Only one can do that, and that would be King Charles now, that could say he's walking away from Canada. And you think he's ever going to do that? He's part of the WEF, right? He's wanting this one world government, and Canada's using everything in their power. All of our little minions, of the Conservatives, all of these parties, all part of it. Elizabeth May, all part of it. Okay? So, people say, well, we've got no money. Listen, and they're saying, well, I only get so much a month. Well, there's other things that you can do called a sacrifice. Okay? We've been doing sacrifices since 2017. So it's up to everybody to do it, no matter how much money you get or don't get. It's your responsibility, because you count. Whether you're wealthy or you're poor as heck, you count. We need your signature. We need your support. We need your lips to tell everybody. Okay? Because by doing nothing, you will get nothing. And not one political party is going to do the agenda, because the corporations are hellbound to get this done. Even if they have to create a fake war or a real war, they're going to do it. All the drones you're seeing everywhere in the United States, they are military owned. They are controlled by the military. And if you look, they've got millions of them, thousands of them. Okay. And, I would say even, thousands in every city, getting ready to, there's my cat making an appearance again. But they're getting ready, right now they're making all kinds of nice things happen with this. Okay. And I've posted that in our Facebook page, the PowerShift page, where you see everything they could do. They've been doing the same maneuvers that what we've been seeing online, making people afraid of an alien invasion, or this is coming from another country. And You know, they're getting really good here. Actually, they did even all kinds of Christmas things, and oh my God, people were in awe. Yes, but at the same time, you've got those who know nothing about it, thinking that these drones are aliens. Okay, but the thing is those drones eventually are going to start chasing us. So fait que là, we have a gentleman here, Danielle. Yes, Danielle. There's lots of things you can do. Okay, sign your free referendum, and then spread the word every day as much as you can. We're not asking everybody to, who can't give blood to give blood. Okay, put it this way. So what we are saying is that this is not going to happen on its own. Okay. All of a sudden, the dollars, this costs money to go see people. It costs money to maintain a website, costs money to get things done, costs money to talk to lawyers. It costs money. How much money did we spend just to talk to lawyers? To be told, no, but they take our money before they can even speak to us. So whatever happened to you get the first half hour free? that went out with the 60s people. Okay, so unless they know that they're going to win the case and they want this case and they want a case and they think they're going to be able to get millions from the government, and then everybody else gets, okay, let's have a class action lawsuit and we're going to sue the pants off of these corporations or the government, and we're going to be suing for $1 billion, but at the end everybody gets $1.50. So come and go to our website, fill out the form for your $1.50. Okay. And this is what it's like, people. The class actions, the ones on top get a lot of money. The rest, $1.50, $3, maybe $100 if you're lucky. That's if you're lucky. Okay. But the lawyers take everything. So most of it. Okay. So it's neither here nor there, but tonight is about human rights and people taking action. Lip service doesn't really give us action, but getting members, other members, if you can't afford it, get another member. Get members to help us out financially. And that's how you can do a service to the CPU, is actually get others to join as well. We've got the referendum, that you can join the referendum community and get some education at the same time for $25 for the year. How much of a sacrifice is that? For your country, to get your country back. But if everybody thinks, oh, somebody else will do it, it'll get done and somebody else will do it, it'll never get done. We've seen this. We've seen this in the last 6 months, even a year. Okay. So the mentality of people needs to change. We need every able Canadian citizen to take part if you want your real freedom. If not, then it's all going to fall apart. Nothing will happen. And you're going to wait forever. And then eventually, you're going to be by yourself, because they're going to win. They're going to win. They have a devotion. If you look at Justin Trudeau, how absolutely cocky he is and arrogant, and he's not even afraid. His whole caucus could leave tomorrow and he'd be sitting there laughing. Why? Because they're going to make him somebody special on the international stage, according to Mr. Klaus Schwab. Him and the Prime Minister of Argentina and all of these others, they're not afraid of Canadians or the parliament or the law, or he's a real narcissist. Okay, because somebody else more powerful is making him promises. Jagmeet Singh has to maintain the Liberals, so it doesn't matter what Jagmeet says one day to the next. He answers to the WEF. Where do you think he got his Maserati from? They're asking all kinds of questions. Oh, well, you can't be able to afford such a car with your salary. Where's it coming from? Well, look no further than Klaus Schwab. The WEF does not pay a dime of taxes in the United States. So don't think that the United States is not behind the WEF. Okay, 100%. Sweden doesn't charge the WEF any taxes either. Okay. We've been invaded. If CSIS and the RCMP don't do something about this, they are as guilty as the WEF doing what they've done in the last 5 years, which is all criminal. So, anyways, I'm going to do a little screen share for you to show you this video, and hopefully, I was supposed to have it uploaded. Oh, I lost the page again. Oh my God, I can't believe I did this. Now I can't see you. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to upload something here, and hopefully I'm not going to be cancel. Share screen. Okay. Video storage. Okay, upload a video. I just need to upload a video because I still haven't done it. That was yesterday. I still haven't done it here because I was having issues trying to get to use. Again, videos. Okay, go up. There we go. But anyways, what I want to show you was a press conference that they had yesterday. And the press conference, though, it's almost like, it's actually as though they are doing it on purpose. When people go in to speak at the to be able to do a conference. Okay. Now I've got this in front of me. I'm going to go back here. Live CPU. Okay. So now I can't see you as I've got this thing in front of my face. So, but anyways, the whole point of this is that what they are trying to do when they're doing a press conference, even at CPAC, it's almost like the most valuable information. You can hardly hear them speak, and they keep playing with the volumes. So anyways, I had to increase the volume, and especially where these are 4 gentlemen that got together and they're trying to work with the Canadian Bar Association, and this is the international it's an international commission of jurists, and they're saying, hey, you're supposed to listen to international human rights law, and actually the Bill of Rights at the international level actually makes kind of our constitution. So when people say, well, we need a new constitution, no, you don't need a new constitution. Okay. So that's a whole bunch of wasted time, wasted energy. And, we need to change the laws. Well, we need to change the laws that are all wrong. Okay. Which is most of them. But at the same time, the rule of law is specific. And at the international level, the rule of law should be followed. If the rule of law was followed the way it's supposed to be, we would have our rights, and we wouldn't have the problems that we're having right now with all of these politicians and lying through their teeth to everybody, putting on a great show, and they're so sincere. I mean, how many thought that Harper was so sincere, and that everybody was so sick of him? It was like anybody but Harper. And then we got Justin Trudeau. Now it's like anybody but Trudeau, and the Poilievre. So I'm glad that I'm 62 years old. And yes, I look a lot better on screen than I do out there. And which is kind of good because it kind of screws up their identification. But anyways, that's just a little joke, okay, people. So, but it's actually true. I look better on here than I do, and might look younger for some. And I've had those comments, but it's like, no, I'm 62 years old, and I remember very well how much everybody struggled in the late 80s. 1988, when Pierre Elliott Trudeau got booted out, it was almost like deja vu with what Justin is doing now. But Justin is going on a much grander scale, a more deadly scale. And then we had Mulrooney, who came in, and Mulrooney was financed by no other than the Bush family. And you can kind of ask, some people about that. But Brian Mulrooney was sent to us and financed mainly by the United States. So all of a sudden, Mulrooney won with a huge landslide. Okay. And yay, so Poilievre is going to come in with a huge landslide. Deja vu. And then everything came crashing down because interest rates went to 14%. People couldn't survive. People were losing their homes. So we're in a deja vu, but more extreme. So when you've studied politics the way that I have for years, knowing that, there's something that's not quite right. But mind you, I used to like Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and I used to think, Justin would make a great prime minister. Now I want to boot myself to Timbuktu for thinking those things because I was ignorant. And I drank the Kool-Aid like everybody else did, So, but anyways, right now we're going to show you a little video. The other one's just processing now that I really want to show you. Once that I can get into there, because now it's like right in front of, it's just processing. And if I click, I might, there we go. If I click. So we're going to go with this one here because it explains. So people who don't understand, this is what we're about.
Attention, Canadians. Okay. Do you feel disconnected from our current political system? This could be our last chance to take a real legal stand for our rights. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The PowerShift to freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate legally replacing the Crown, King Charles III, and our partocracy system with a true democracy, the peoples as the true collective head of state with veto power over our governance, to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future as collective head of state, which was legally owed and kept from us since the patriation of our Constitution, an official decolonization from the United Kingdom of 1982. It's time to correct the past of our government's lies and omissions to the people of our great country before it is too late. People 15 years old and over can sign our Canadian People's Referendum at canadianreferendum.ca and unite for our rights as the collective head of state in our Constitution. Together, we can be the example in reshaping Canada's future, not just for us, but for all peoples worldwide, once and for all. Are you ready to be part of this transformative movement? Join the PowerShift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace and face the change required on your part to shape our future.
Okay, so back to here. There we go. And, I didn't arrive this on my own. Okay, it took 17 years of research. I had to convince myself that this was I had to find a way that they couldn't stop us. And this is it. We're here now. They can't stop us if the people stand with us. And every other country can do the same. It can have the same effect and even stronger effect than even the convoy has. Okay. The convoy was a great startup. I just wished, um, I mean, the government was dead set on doing what it needed to do. But again, it's everybody understanding their rights, and that the lawyers and the bar and everybody else has to come around and actually do something positive. Okay. With that, but it's the people that have to push it. If we don't do it, the bar's not going to do it on its own. And none of them can remove the crown other than we, the people, together signing that Canadian referendum. And the ones who signed the Convention of Consent, you need to re-sign that referendum because that is more specific. Although we're going to add the convention to that and say, hey, these people also wanted their rights recognized under the right of collective self-determination and self-governance. We all had that right in 1982. 1982, the country was handed back to Canadians, not the Canadian government or the provinces. It was to the people. The provinces have zero power by law, and neither does the federal government. But because nothing's been changed and the people are doing nothing to change that, they have the right to rule in the meantime. And that's why they call it de facto, because we have not spoken yet. A few people in front of Parliament isn't going to do it because they want to survive. And they're going to pull out all the stops to keep going. Okay, mark my words. So we need to be prepared. And this is why we're prepared. But you guys need to understand exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it so that it can all be done properly.
That I will open the...
Okay, so this is the video that I showed yesterday, but it was so bad. But I want you, and I'm going to stop it at where it's really important for you to remember exactly what these guys are saying. And it's exactly what we said. It's exactly what we sent to the senators year after year, to David Lametti, to everybody, to Varani, and, all of the ministers, all of the provinces, everywhere across Canada. And we're being justified here and now. So if you think we don't know what we're talking about, you better think again. But we can't do anything until you do something. So when others say, we're waiting for the CPU to do something, and if they can, well, then we'll join in. No, you can't put the cart before the horse, okay? The horse has to be the leader, and the horse is our Canadian citizens who have to launch this movement, who have to, join us so that we can make sure that this does happen. Okay, so waiting for somebody else, you're going to wait forever, and we're all going to lose. And our children, because we can turn, if we're smart enough, we take back, this country belongs to us. We could take back all of our natural resources and everything else. And that's what the law states, all legally, and the government can't do anything about it. So go to CanadianReferendum.ca, read that, and then you'll see that all of the links that I've put in there, those are our rights. And that's like our International Bill of Rights. And yes, Canada signed on to them. So did the UK. So it's tough luck for them. We win this thing. If you are behind us, you join the CPU, you become a member, you get educated, and then you could go and lead your groups in your communities. Okay? Because we need everybody to rise here. And you need to rise the proper way for this to work. So I'm going to play this, and please make sure you listen. I had to increase the volume, and hopefully everything will be fine. So I'm just going to bring that up. And here we go, people.
Do you want to put it on?
Hello, bonjour. Merci d'avoir pris le temps de...
Thank you for taking the time to participate in this media advisory so we can talk about one of the most significant issues facing human rights in Canada.
Director of the International Commission of Jurists Canada. Together with the three esteemed speakers in front of us today, we would like to present the key points from a major pan-Canadian event which took place on November 29th in three cities of Canada: Ottawa, Montreal, Edmonton, and online. The one-day-long event, titled A Call to Action, Fundamental Rights and the Notwithstanding Clause, was hosted by a group of organizations from across Canada, including the International Commission of Jurists Canada, La Faculté de Droit, Université de Montréal, the Center for Constitutional Studies at the University of Alberta, the University of Ottawa's Faculty of Law, and the U-Ottawa Professional Development Institute. The aim of the event was to bring together a diverse group of scholars, lawyers, journalists, and others to discuss the challenges posed by the evolving practice around the Notwithstanding Clause, formerly known as Section 33 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This provision of the Charter, which allows Canada's federal and provincial governments to derogate from some of the key provisions of the Charter human rights commitments, has been invoked with unusual frequency in the last half-decade, ending a period of its relative dormancy. In light of this shift from the clause's dormancy to activity, the 29th November event addressed a set of insistent questions about how political and legal actors might navigate the changing landscape of rights protection in Canada, including questions about the types of legal arguments and political action that might be deployed in response to more concerning uses of Section 33 in the coming months and years. The speakers today are Senator Peter Hader, Professor Earl Mendes, University of Ottawa Faculty of Law and President of the International Commission of Jurists Canada, and Professor Stéphane Bollac, Université de Montréal, Faculté de Droit. Following short presentations by the speakers, there will be time to address questions. Please.
Thank you very much. One of the things I want to start with is by presenting the views from the University of Alberta. And one of the reasons why it was critical that we have the University of Alberta presenting their views is that they were keen to present one of the architects of Section 33, who is often not really discussed very much in the media, with all the discussion on Section 33. I'm talking about Premier Lougheed, who was there at the creation of Section 33 when he was in favor of it, but his strong position, and he basically made this clear in his presentations to the University of Alberta in the 1980s. I was there as a former law professor from the University of Alberta, when he basically stated that even though he was in favor, he was very insistent there should be political accountability for any use of Section 33. And the way he presented that was that, first of all, he was strongly in favor of not using a preemptive use of Section 33, which means that you would be preempting the judicial branch to making its view on whether or not a Section 33 clause is justified. And he basically felt that that was a precondition of him, a conservative premier, from essentially accepting the notwithstanding clause. He also went on to say that, in his view, this notion of political accountability meant that there should be a majority vote in the legislature before it is used. Now, what's really interesting that his views actually carried through into the public in Alberta. And keeping in mind that he was a conservative premier and subsequent premiers were conservative, like Conservative Ralph Klein, who used Section 33, but because of the backlash from the media, political society, on two occasions, firstly dealing with the compensation for sterilization, and secondly dealing with his attempt to basically prevent the move towards same-sex marriage, the backlash led him to back off on that. So what the University of Alberta did in this presentation was to present, if you like, the views of a conservative premier. And given the fact that we have the potential for a future conservative prime minister who says he or she will use the clause very much, gives you an indication that the creation of Section 33 was very much driven by a conservative view that there should be political accountability for the use of such a clause, which meant to not have the preemption use of the clause, and secondly, to have at least a majority view of it. So this was the views of our colleagues at the University of Alberta, who was very keen to present that view of the origins from Alberta of Section 33. So moving on then to the views of my own university's presentations on that, we built on that to point out that where the most recent invocations of Section 33 on 3 occasions by Premier Ford really showed that what was at stake was not really the sovereignty of legislatures to override judicial decisions which may be overstretching the views of the judiciary, but in fact what was happening in effect was an autocratic intent by the executive on 3 occasions. Firstly, when dealing, for example, with the use of the Section 33 clause in terms of seizing down or scaling down the wards in Toronto from 47 to 35, when because a Superior Court judge basically said, you can't do that, it's in violation of the Charter, Premier Ford immediately brought in Section 33. Now, eventually, that was allowed on appeal, and ultimately in the Supreme Court of Canada, that too was allowed. But I want to stress what happened in the Supreme Court of Canada was very significant, that even though a majority allowed the use of Section 33, a strong dissent said that they were unwritten principles of the Constitution which would invalidate that legislation. And the ones that they stressed, most important, was the democracy principle, the rule of law principle, and the protection of minorities principle. So that gives you an indication that in the Supreme Court of Canada, there are potential limits to how the clause should be used. Again, to go back to Premier Lougheed's view, there has to be some accountability for the use, excessive use of the clause. Nevertheless, Premier Ford went on to use it twice again. One, again, in terms of trying to limit the advertising by his chief adversary, the unions, by extending the period by which they could not give compensation. Yet again, that too went all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. As an intervener in the Supreme Court of Canada, again, the International Commission of Jurists tried to stress that because what was at stake in that case was the Section 3 right, the democracy right, was that there should be a very strong interpretation by the court to stop the use of the Section 33 to undermine non-derogable rights. We are waiting for that decision, and we hope that the Supreme Court of Canada will give you some indication that they too will have some concerns yet again with Section 33. And the final one, which is obviously one which we had in some respects, not so much the sovereignty of the legislature being in play, but the sovereignty of the people. When again Ford used Section 33 to stop a potential strike by the lowest paid workers in the education sector. And he threatened to use of it and did use it, but because the workers and a very strong majority of Ontario's population basically had a backlash against that, he finally backed off. So what does all this say? It basically says that yet again, the most recent use of Section 33 is a fundamental lack of political accountability, fundamental lack of the promise by a conservative Premier Lougheed that there should always be checks on the excessive use, such as, for example, preventing the preemptive use, and secondly, at least giving an indication for the public to have some say in the use of a clause which potentially can undermine still the most important constitutional document that the vast majority of Canadians still consider as a critical part of the Canadian Constitution, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So in the end, we in Ottawa basically stressed that going back to Premier Lougheed's view that there should be political accountability and safeguards, we are suggesting that in addition to the points we made, that we teamed up with the Canadian Bar Association. And they, together with us, and some of us working with the Canadian Bar Association, presented a letter to Minister Virani, the Justice Minister, to suggest that there should be critical guidelines in the future use of Section 33. And let me spell them out. Firstly, they again should be a prevention of the use of the preemptive clause. Secondly, there should be a majority vote. Thirdly, there should be a large amount of public discussion, possibly through the use of a preamble, which allows more discussion in the legislature to therefore give some semblance to the idea of legislative sovereignty as opposed to executive autocratic responsibility. And then finally, like the others, we too agree that there should be some way in which there should be, for example, a charter compliance review by the Department of Justice before there is a formal presenting of a Section 33 clause before Parliament. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll pass it on to my colleague who was in charge of the University of Montreal's presentations.
Merci, Harold.
Thank you very much.
Alors, l'événement,
This event with the universities of Ottawa, Montreal, and Edmonton focused on a call to action in order to have more debates on the matter and to try to speak with civil society so that it might be more interested in files that are often summarized too simply as goodwill and issues of rights and freedoms. We wanted to look at going back to the source. One must understand, if you're interested in the notwithstanding clause, well, it focuses on basic rights. And with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it is essential. In Quebec, we have a charter, and in Canada, we have the Canadian Charter. But beyond these legislative texts, these are things that are intrinsically linked to being a person. The Ford decision from '84, unfortunately, is sometimes considered, especially in Quebec, but also elsewhere, as being untouchable, as though a single decision could cover all aspects of the notwithstanding clause. And this happens with complex matters regarding the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And if we're talking about charters, with both the Canadian Charter and the Quebec Charter, there's usually a series of decisions that clarify applicable tests. And we believe that that is essential in the current context of an increased use of notwithstanding clauses. It shouldn't be used to radically change the way we understand Section 33 of the Canadian Charter and 52 of the Quebec Charter. And as my colleague Mr. Mendes mentioned, we should reevaluate the role of the courts as guardians of the Canadian Constitution as the rule of law, and whether or not they should require more and go beyond the simple matters brought up in Ford 84. We're not talking about reversing it, but to analyze things further regarding the Canadian and Quebec charters. Reviewing the interpretation of Section 33 must come with adjustments, and it's been needed since 2020 with how they are revised with Poulain Quebec Inc. and the City of Toronto. We continue to focus on the goal. What is the goal of the clause? In this case, Section 33. When we look at Section 33 in context and what it seeks to achieve, and especially if we look at this with the Charter, we need to understand that 33 is an exception to confirm the rule, which is to protect human rights in Canada. When we keep that in mind, it validates an interpretation that will maintain the role as a guardian of constitutional rights, and so the courts should act and require more than what jurisprudence in the country has suggested. And two final things. International law validates such an interpretation. We can talk about global.
Okay, right here, you heard what he said. International validates, okay, exactly everything we've said. And validating international law is what needs to happen in Canada, because Canada is in breach, and so is the UK, by not finalizing our decolonization of 1982. And they are guilty of not having proceeded with that. So we're allowed to be able to proceed with that. And, you know, as much as I try to validate the CPU and our research, they are validating it here and now. And please listen carefully, because everything we've ever said is right, but we need the people to stand with us. Without the people, nothing can get done. And that's a clear majority. So we need to pull out all the stops here, do what needs to be done, or keep whining for nothing and doing nothing, and keep praying for somebody else to do your job. But only you can do this. You yourself, everybody who hears this. And it's up to each and every one of us to go and get a whole bunch of other people to do the same. And it's not about trying to overthrow a government or anything like that. We are in our legal rights to do so. We need to remove the crown. We have the right to do it, but it needs every Canadian citizen that is cohesive and has a brain, you know, to be able to make decisions after. Because if you want your rights and your power, and you want to be able to make sure that no corruption exists in Canada with our natural resources, and that the people are no longer slaves to a corporation, then you need to become the owner of that corporation and that country. We have two things in Canada: a country that has a corporation, not just slaves working for it. And right now, that's what it is. So it's up to you to make up your minds on what you want to do. So I'm going to make you listen, keep listening. This is extremely valuable information. And tomorrow night, I'm going to redo this in French for the French people. Okay.
And constitutional rights, but using international law is being more and more commonplace, and should be the case for the reinterpretation of Section 33 regarding two standards: the one to access to justice, and that's what we need to understand. Secondly, for redress, we need to ensure that Canadians have access to justice when their fundamental rights have been infringed upon. And lastly, in current context, regarding Indigenous rights and constitutional rights, I would like to highlight a recent case of the Supreme Court of Canada from 2024, which validates the idea that courts should be involved in decisions that could lead to limits, restrictions on rights and freedoms. We looked at Section 25 of the Canadian Charter, which protects Indigenous rights, and the Supreme Court of Canada in that case clearly maintained that role as a guardian of the Constitution and protected one of the most fundamental rights in the way to govern in a constitutional democracy such as Canada. And it's the matter of the rule of law. And again, it is the court's responsibility, and that should be their constitutional mission. And so that's a way to summarize the key takeaways from the panel hosted by the Université de Montréal. Thank you.
Just before we hand over to...
Okay, so I want to finish, like he said it all. It's up to the courts. And unfortunately, the courts, if you look at 9 judges sitting on the Supreme Court, and then you have 5 against 4, okay? There's a problem there. And this is an issue that I brought up to the senators and even to the courts, okay, the Supreme Court, is that, their interpretation is what's wrong with this thing. And then interpretation can make them go in the way that the government wants to, and to override our rights. And then when they're talking about our fundamental freedoms, that includes the Syracuse principles. When he mentioned that there's an explanation in regards to our charter and our rights and our international law rights have all been explained in the Syracuse principles, as well as the it was the Johannesburg's principles. And then again, in a lot of the documents of the United Nations that I've already produced to use, like the comment number 37 in regards to COVID, all of these things were there for our benefit, yet our ignorant lawyers and the bar and everybody, and even the justices across Canada, even ones that, I wrote to them, and then I asked them if they were actually participating in manslaughter, okay, and not premeditated manslaughter, but anyways, I got an FU back and a F off back from justices, okay. Instead of asking me why the hell are you saying this, I was just asking a question, okay. But again, all of these ministers, the prime ministers, all the way down since 1982 have lied to us. The Conservatives are no different. Nothing will change. You might have hope, but why keep hoping? Because hope only gives you nothing. You hope and you do nothing. Hope is great because it keeps you moving if you're in action. But if you're just hoping and you're not in action, you are wasting the rights and the freedoms of this country and everybody else's rights and your own rights and your family's rights on ignorance that will serve nothing. Because no action is ignorance of a false hope, thinking somebody's going to come and do it for you. We can't. We've been telling you since 2017, we cannot do this without you. Every single person that hears this, you need to spread it. You need to spread it now before it is too late. And we are at the last hour. We are at the last hour. Because nobody's going to save you. Trump's not going to save you. He wants this country. Who deserves this country? Canadians? To finally have it, to finally benefit, to finally make this country grow to the point where our infrastructure is all covered by the monies we make on our natural resources, human resources, and this way we're not taxed. We can have dividends, perhaps. We have lots of very intelligent Canadians, but right now the most intelligent Canadians have been brainwashed into this falsehood of a one world government and the WEF that, they're doing right. Well, they use nice words to entice people, but they don't tell you the truth. And when you listen to words and that convinces you without looking at the proof, make sure that if you're going to be using any kind of thinking, that you use critical thinking, that you turn around and you look, what is their actions? Actions speak louder than words. And when people tell me, oh, I'm a freedom fighter, well, what have you done? What is your solution? We've got a huge number of people sitting on YouTube making money, asking for donations, doing all kinds of things, only to bring you the same news you've listened to over and over again. It's like a repeat performance because they've made they've made their salaries out of that. But yet they arrive at nothing. They have no solution. Ask them, what is your solution? Before you say that you're not going to support the CPU because you're going to wait for the CPU to do something, well, our solution has always been open to everybody and everybody has to participate. Otherwise, it will not exist because it's the only legal solution available to anybody, to all of us. And then you need to know how to debate this thing. You need to be able to, stand at the international level and fight the international countries that are going to be fighting us on this because the corporations are controlling all of them. So that's what you need to put in your head. We can release not just Canadians, but the world with this. It is our right. But you need to be in action, not just lip service. Okay? So keep listening. It gets even better.
Senator Harder, we were very pleased that Senator Harder agreed to come and present his views at the University of Ottawa's event. And for that, I'd like to pass over to Senator Harder to give what he said at the conference, which I think was very much strongly supported by everyone else from the three universities.
Thank you very much, Professor. As has been made clear, the notwithstanding clause has never been used at the federal level in 42 years. And yet, last spring, there was musings from the leader of the opposition at a speech that he gave before some policemen, and that he would consider invoking the notwithstanding clause in federal legislation. I was very disturbed by that and thought that there would be, frankly, a public reaction of some note, both politically and from social media. And was disappointed that it seemed to go unnoticed, almost because there has been a normalization of the practice based on the provincial experience that has been referenced. So in May of this year, May 23rd, I tabled a motion in the Senate outlining how the Senate should react should a notwithstanding clause bill be introduced. I spoke to that motion in September 24th, and I'd like to just highlight how I believe a Senate should act, and frankly, how I wish a House of Commons would act, because it is in many senses on this matter a chamber that ought to consider the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a very focused fashion. So here are the principles. One, there would be no preemptive use. That has been described already in this panel, and I won't detail it. Second, that the Minister of Justice, as the Minister of Justice does for all bills now, table a charter statement, which would very clearly have to indicate what are the charter implications of the bill being proposed. Third, a commitment by the government that there would be no time allocation used in the consideration of this bill in the Senate, and I hope in the House of Commons. And four, that there would be, as a result of that, appropriate hearings to hear from experts and those affected most by the proposed bill. This would ensure that there was an appropriate dialogue and public engagement, because as the founders of the notwithstanding clause felt, that this should be a very rarely used instrument that should not undermine the Charter's provisions. A lot of talk in the last while about parliamentary supremacy versus judicial supremacy. And the founders of the notwithstanding clause very much were on the parliamentary supremacy side with a price. In other words, there was the 5-year limit, and the engagement with an electorate. I would like to suggest that with the approach I'm outlining, that we would be reinforcing neither parliamentary nor judicial supremacy, but constitutional supremacy. Because that, after all, is what this is about. How do you engage in a dialogue with Canadians when their rights are being removed by the very government? And I worry, frankly, about populist authoritarian governments undermining the whole charter, which so many Canadians view as a defining instrument of what it is to be Canadian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we're open to questions now from the media.
Thank you. I'll ask our participants who are online to please use the raised hand function on Zoom if you have a question. I don't see any online, so I'm going to use my moderator's privilege to ask one, if that's okay. When we talk about accountability for the use of the notwithstanding clause, doesn't that ultimately belong in the hands of voters? I mean, Saskatchewan, the government there was re-elected. Doug Ford's been re-elected. Bill 21 is very popular amongst Quebec voters. Shouldn't that be the ultimate check against for voters to have the say in whether they approve of this or not?
Actually, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm prepared to say some stuff on that. We live in a democracy. Of course, voters have an important role to play, and it was designed in the instrument itself. My concern is that the use of the notwithstanding clause is politically achievable when you're dealing with the least able to defend themselves in the court system, and that is a worry. And I think it's to the credit of governments of all parties at the federal level not to have contemplated the use of the notwithstanding clause, even in the face of the rejection of legislation that they otherwise would have favored. So I understand your comment about the discipline of the electorate, and it's provided for. But if you are concerned about populism, running roughshod over individual rights, particularly of those who are not less able to defend themselves, I think we've got a real serious problem.
And can I add to that? One of the things that is often forgotten is that the reason why we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms was that after the end of the Second World War, there was an agreement by Canadians coast to coast to coast that we had to show that we are in agreement with what was being developed at the international stage, which was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Often forgotten that a Canadian was one of the drafters of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, John Humphreys, a former professor at McGill University who became the director of the UN Human Rights Commission. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau basically picked up on this amazing feat by a Canadian, but by the whole world, to have a document which would basically say, in a democracy where you are committed to these fundamental rights, the views of majority cannot always prevail. That ultimately there has to be ways in which you can have rights which are protected by some means whatsoever. We decided in 1982 to have a Bill of Rights which then would be protected primarily by the judiciary. Yes, we decided that there would be legislative supremacy through the use of the Section 33 clause. But before that would happen, there would be some form of accountability, as Premier Lougheed said, should be in place, such as not having the preemptive clause to allow the courts to rule on it, and secondly, to give some indication that within the legislature itself, you're talking about voters. Well, what about the majority of the legislature itself to have a vote in the erasing of the rights? And then finally, I can point out to you one thing which happened with Premier Ford's use of the notwithstanding clause, when he basically was going to use the clause to stop the strike by the lowest paid education workers in Ontario. Think about what would happen if he had gone ahead with this. That essentially, by not giving them the right, yes, ultimately he may have essentially been re-elected, but what would happen to those voters, those workers? What sort of democracy would they see happening in Ontario when their rights have been completely erased? So I'm talking about voters, yes, but think about which voters which would be susceptible to the autocratic use of Section 33. Do you want to add anything?
Oui, je vais ajouter. Bon, on est prof d'université, alors on est là pour donner un...
We can give a perspective as academics. We can look at the post-war time, and I made reference to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was given more details so that it could protect what is inherent to human rights. Some might think that human rights are a gift that representatives of populations offer, but no. With Section 33 and the notwithstanding clause and Section 52 for the Quebec Charter, these measures exist for a reason. West Valley Peace from 1648 that put an end to the 30-Year War, which is often seen as at the heart of international law, but also saw constitutional documents, and with West Valley, it sought to protect religious minorities, and because the prince had a different religion. That's constitutionalism. That doesn't come from 1982 or Pierre Elliott Trudeau. It comes from long before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I'll come back to your question now. History shows that the majority can decide to protect the rights of the minorities, but that doesn't necessarily work. And we need a balanced way of doing things. We don't want one extreme or another. In 1982, for those negotiating, they thought that Section 33 might help find that kind of balance. But 45 years later, we're seeing that that balance has been broken. There's an excessive use of Section 33, not only in my province in Quebec, by invoking links to the Quebec identity in order to have the support of Quebecers, and in other provinces, and we heard a lot of talk about Ontario, but this is happening elsewhere in the country as well. There's an excessive use of this notwithstanding clause, and it can short circuit what has been working quite well since '82. And we want a call to action to get back to the source. And we want to focus on protecting fundamental freedoms, which is essential to human rights. We need to remind the Premier of that, and the Prime Minister and his Minister of Justice. And also a reminder to François Legault and Mr. Barrette in Quebec.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.
And there you have it. Oops. Okay. That game, I don't know why that's playing now, but anyways, we're going to make sure that it doesn't start. Got it. Jeepers. Okay. So how do I get this out of here? Oh, there we go. Jesus. So, I mean, I was screaming when I heard these gentlemen, but I could barely hear anything. So I had to download it and then bring up bring up the volume so you guys can all hear. And they're saying exactly what we've been saying, but we went even further than that. Okay, because it has to be brought further than that. What they're saying is it's okay under, the way that the Canadian system works now, but they never even came close to discussing what we discuss. And that's our right as collective head of state. And the only time we're going to have our rights, and we need to make sure that the next prime minister and the politicians understand human rights. None of them right now, not even in the cities, they're creating all kinds of laws without even understanding what human rights are. And that's a danger, people. That is a huge danger. And this is what's been happening. Now we have a whole bunch of politicians that are leading our country that don't care about human rights. They just care about what they're doing. And most Canadians think that, we have rights to do certain things. Well, no, you don't. They can take away those rights. The only reason why Pierre Elliott Trudeau was freaking out, and if you read our documents and then you go to CanadianReferendum.ca and you go to the About page, you'll be able to read the Hansards from the UK back then, and you'll see exactly what that proves. It proves that Trudeau wanted to destroy all of the indigenous rights and then destroy ours. That's why they brought in a charter. The UK said that, hey, now Canadians have less rights than they did before with this charter because it was missing a whole bunch of things. So the charter, bringing home the charter, was a huge fraud on Canadians when we already had the International Bill of Human Rights to protect us without the charter. Okay? So the charter needs to be burnt. And in place, our International Bill of Human Rights. So a lot of yous might not like the UN and all that, but the UN was also infiltrated just like our governments. And if you want to destroy the UN, then you destroy your International Bill of Human Rights. And that's how intelligent people are. Okay? They don't even think. They just regurgitate what everybody else is saying. No, we need to clean it up. Cleaning up our government, cleaning up the international governance as well. The United Nations, everything else. We need to clean it up, people, because they've been infiltrated. Just like our own government, our own municipalities, our own provincial premiers who keep running this like a colonist country. The people of Quebec or PEI or anywhere else own the oil and gas in Alberta and vice versa. Quebecers don't own Quebec and all its natural resources. That's all Canadians and Indigenous peoples. And until you understand that, and until you start taking action, we're never going to be able to benefit from it. You have a corporation. You are richer and more powerful than you know. Start living like it. Start acting like it. Become responsible citizens fighting for your country and all of the assets that we have to leave our children and the children to come. Instead of this stupidity and this, I'm going to pray that somebody else does this instead of me. Or I'm going to pray to Jesus. Well, you can pray all you want. It ain't going to happen. Sorry for screaming, but it's like false hope gets people nowhere. Action does. And the only hope you should have is that every Canadian takes part, because you're taking part too. Become the example. So we brought you a solution. What else do you want from us? We can't do any of it at all unless you are with us. Period. So that we know we can't meet tomorrow. Sorry. But anyways, I'm not here because I've got other things to do. Then I'm going to be busy with doing the French not French translation, but trying to make sure that the people in French actually get some of this stuff. But really, the most important discussions there were made by two, and we have the French version of that, hopefully on CPAC. So I'm going to go and get that if possible. And hopefully the translator will be a little bit better. But anyways, again, when you try to do anything, it costs money. So if I were to go and do a press conference at CPAC, well, you need money to get there, and you need money to pay for the translators, and you need money for this and money for that. And there's always money because we live on a pay-to-play planet. So if you want to play on this planet, you need to pay up. And that's what they've done, where we shouldn't even have to if we're smart with our natural resources and everything. But we can't touch those until we remove the crown. And only the people can do that. So take your pick. Because you know what? If you do nothing, we're going to be sitting here in 5 years. Well, we're not going to be here anymore because we're not going to support this. We're not going to support a bunch of people who want to do nothing. So eventually we're going to have to give this up. But, you know, you'll be miserable. And until the people rule, there's no freedom. True freedom only comes when the people rule. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with that and with this little commercial, again, to remind you of what's mostly important, what's more important than Christmas, what's more important than anything else in this life right now is for Canadians to change our governance for the future of our children. Okay? It's the children. 62 years old, I couldn't give, I don't care if I live or die tomorrow. But I care about the children. And that's what keeps me going. Okay? Their future. What are they going to see? How are they going to live? How are they going to survive? Eating bugs? They're not only going to be allowed to be able to eat 3 ounces of meat at certain times of the year. And because this is what the WEF is doing. So you better start reading. Okay. But the first things you need to read is the Canadian referendum. And that is history in the making, people. So you want a history and a real revolution that makes us free and not under the guise of another, monarchy or whatever. We have a kingdom here, and it's the kingdom of the people. Okay, remember that. So, there's lots of ways. Be creative. Contact us, and we can always work something out. Okay, but you need to hold your end of the bargain. Okay, so we have a solution. If anybody else is asking you for anything, ask them about their solution and how they see winning and bringing that into courts, because you can't go to courts with pseudo common law. Okay. And I don't discuss anything with anybody when they start talking to me about pseudo common law. I walk away from the conversation. Okay. We need to use laws that will get inside of a courtroom. And to be able to justify ourselves if need be. Okay. But the people rising, we shouldn't even need a courtroom. Okay. And if we do, then we have to have all of the arguments to get there. And we do. Okay. So internationally, we're safe. And there's a green light there. So I don't know why nobody wants to cross that and go through the green light and move forward. So if you don't hear from me from here to Christmas, happy holidays. And think about this. The best Christmas gift you can give yourself and your family is this. Nothing else. So get them involved, give them a membership. They can get a $25 membership for the referendum. Give them something to live for. Give them something to fight for. Or you can, where the magic happens is in the CPU under our VIP memberships. And this is where you can have access to me and our meetings, and also in our chats in the community. So find us on Mighty Networks and our go to thecpu.ca and join the CPU, and then you'll be able to speak with us directly inside the chat room. Okay, so happy holidays, and here we go. And thank you to all of our members before we go, and those who have donated, have made sacrifices, since those who have been with us since the beginning, following us and keeping the hope. Well, the hope is good, but now we need your action. We need people to take action. Hope is useless without action. Okay.